Hi, welcome to week 7 of our SHSAT training course. So this week's math topic is going to be probability. So first we're going to define what probability is. It's the mathematical prediction of how likely an event is to happen. And the way you calculate it is the probability of any event is the amount of possible outcomes in which this event you're trying to predict happens divided by the total amount of possible outcomes at all. So for example, the example of rolling a 2 on a normal dice is 1 out of 6 because there are 6 possible outcomes for what you can roll. You can roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And in only one of these outcomes do you actually get a 2. So the amount of outcomes in which you roll a 2 is 1, and the amount of total outcomes that are possible is 6. So now we're going to move on to some example problems. So the first problem, a cooler contains 3 types of beverages, 5 bottles of apple juice, 3 bottles of grape juice, and 6 bottles of fruit punch. What is the probability that a bottle chosen at random is not apple juice? So if it's not apple juice, it means it's either grape juice or fruit punch. Well, how many different bottles of either grape juice or fruit punch are there? It's 3 plus 6, out of a total of 3 plus 5 plus 6, which is 14. And 3 plus 6 is 9. So there are 9 possibilities for how to draw a bottle that's not apple juice, and there are 14 total bottles that you can draw. So the probability of drawing a bottle that's not apple juice is 9 out of 14, which is answer choice C. The next problem. A basket contains red balls, green balls, and white balls. There are 12 red balls in the basket. The probability of randomly choosing a red ball is 1 in 3. If the probability of randomly choosing a green ball is 1 in 4, how many green balls are in the basket? Well, in this problem, we're given a lot less information, so we actually have to figure out some more stuff before we can just right away plug in our equation for probability. We know there are 12 red balls in the basket, and the random probability of choosing one is 1 in 3. Well, from this, we can figure out how many balls there are in total in the basket, because we know that 12 divided by the total number of balls equals 1 in 3. So that means that the total number of balls equals 12 times 3, which is 36. Okay, so now we know the total amount of red, green, and white balls together is 36. We also know that the probability of randomly choosing a green ball is 1 in 4. Well, what does that mean? That means that 1 in 4 balls in the basket are green. So we need to figure out the amount of green balls, we do 36 times 1/4. And 36 divided by 4 equals 9. So the answer choice is going to be G. Okay. So next problem. Lamel has a jar containing 6 red chips, 10 blue chips, and 4 yellow chips. If he removes 1 chip at random, what's the probability that it will not be red? Well, we know that if it's not red, it means that it has to be either blue or yellow. So this probability is going to be equal to the total amount of blue and yellow chips in his jar divided by the total amount of chips in general in his jar. So we know that he has 10 blue plus 4 yellow chips, and that's 14 chips in total. And we know that the total amount of chips in his jar is 10 plus 4 plus 6, which is 20. So the probability of him drawing a chip that's either blue or yellow, also known as the probability of him drawing a chip that's not red, is 14 over 20, which is equal to 7 over 10, which is answer choice B. Okay, so there's one more problem left. The cards in the table above are mixed in a box. Which animal pictured on a card has exactly a 1 in 4 chance of being picked at random from the box? And by the way, chance means the same as probability. So this is another way of saying, like, for which animal is the probability of you drawing a card with that animal 1/4. So there's a 1 in 4 chance of being picked at random from the box. That means that there should be a quarter of the amount of cards with that animal on them as there are cards in total. So the first thing we do is we find the amount of total cards. Well, that's just going to be 8 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 1, which we got from this column, because this tells us the amount of cards, for each animal separately. So in total, that should be the total amount of cards. And that is going to be 24 total cards. So we need to find the animal such that they're the amount of cards with that animal on them that the chance of drawing that is 1 in 4. So that means that the total amount of cards with that animal on it should be 24 over 4, because that's the same thing as 24 times 1/4. So we know that 24 over 4 is equal to 6. So we need to find an animal such that there are 6 cards with that animal on them. Well, if we look, the only animal that meets this criteria is a dog. So there are 6 cards with dogs out of 24 total cards. So the probability of randomly drawing a card with a dog on it is 6 over 24, which is the same as 1/4. So the answer is F. And there's one more important thing about probability that you should know, and that this is not a guarantee by any means. So what that means is, if something has a 1 in 2 chance of happening based on, something else happening, like for example, if I'm rolling a dice and there's a 1 in 6 chance that I get a 2, as we saw in the example at the start, if I roll the dice 6 times, that's not guaranteed that I'm going to get a 2. It's true for any event. Like if there's a 1 in 3 chance that if something happens, then there's going to be a specific result, doing it 3 times will not guarantee anything. It does increase the chances of this result happening. For example, if I roll a dice 6 times, I'm more likely to get a 2 than if I roll it once, but my chance is not 100%. Another simpler, clearer example is flipping a coin. There's a 50-50 chance of getting heads or tails, but if you flip it twice, you could, for example, get 2 heads in a row and not get tails a single time. So that's about it for probability. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, and we'll see you next week.